Imagine walking through life with eyes that see beyond illusion. Imagine realizing that everything you were ever taught about success, happiness, and even yourself was just a temporary mask, something society gave you so you could play a role. Now imagine what happens when that mask begins to fall away, when you awaken, not metaphorically but truly, spiritually. When this awakening begins, you start to see patterns where others see chaos, meaning where others see randomness, and silence where others only hear noise. You feel as though you've stumbled upon a secret no one else remembers, something ancient and yet profoundly personal. But there's a warning hidden within that revelation. Not everything you discover should be shared. Some truths are sacred, and in the wrong company, even wisdom can turn into burden. Before we dive into the 5 things you should never reveal to anyone once you awaken, I invite you to pause for a moment and think, what if the greatest wisdom of all is not in what we say, but in what we choose to keep silent? If you're ready to explore that mystery, then make sure you're fully here with me. Subscribe to this channel, leave your like, and share this video with someone who's walking the same inner path. Because today, we'll uncover truths that may change how you understand yourself, your purpose, and your connection with the universe itself. And trust me, what you'll hear at the end of this journey is the most important and transformative secret of all. Alan Watts once said that awakening is not about becoming something more. It's about realizing that there was never anything missing. But this realization, though liberating, can isolate you. Because when you awaken, you start to perceive life in layers, some visible, others deeply hidden, and not everyone around you is ready or willing to see through those layers. The first reaction of an awakened soul is often to share, to speak, to tell others about what they've seen, as if illumination were something contagious. But that impulse is a test. Silence in this stage becomes a form of wisdom. You begin to learn that the sacred cannot survive the noise of the ordinary. There are truths that lose their essence when spoken too early, or to ears that still live within the dream. Have you ever tried explaining a deep realization to someone who only shrugged or laughed it off? That moment of disconnection can feel like betrayal, but it's not. It's simply the world reminding you that spiritual awakening is not a group experience. It's a solitary unfolding. Watts often compared human life to a play, where each of us is an actor pretending not to know we're acting. The awakening, then, is the instant you realize you are both the actor and the playwright. Yet if you tell the other actors that the play isn't real, you disrupt the very illusion that allows the play to continue. That's why, in moments of deep insight, silence is not repression, it's reverence. The first thing you must never reveal once you've touched the deeper truth is the full extent of your inner experiences. These visions, sensations, or mystical encounters are not meant to be proven or debated. They are meant to transform you quietly from within. When you share them too freely, you invite misunderstanding, skepticism, or even ridicule, and that can dilute their power. True spiritual insight isn't validated through others' approval. It is measured by the peace it brings to your heart. Think about it. When you wake from a dream, the images fade quickly, but the feeling lingers. That feeling is what matters. The same applies to awakening. It's the transformation within you, not the explanation, that gives it meaning. The awakened mind learns to carry its revelations like sacred fire, warm enough to light the way, but never so exposed that the wind can extinguish it. Alan Watts often laughed at the human tendency to capture enlightenment, to make it an identity. He said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." When you tell others about your spiritual state, you risk turning awakening into ego. You begin to identify as the awakened one, forgetting that awakening is not a title, it's a continuous surrender. So, guard your inner world. Let it breathe in silence. Remember, not everyone who smiles is capable of understanding your transformation. Some will interpret your detachment as coldness, your clarity as arrogance, your peace as indifference. They cannot see that beneath your calm lies a vast ocean of awareness, and that's perfectly fine. They're not supposed to. What matters is that you see, because the spiritual path is not a race toward enlightenment, but a slow unlearning of illusion. And that unlearning, once begun, changes everything: your perception, your desires, your relationships. But again, not everything you discover should be revealed. Some wisdom must remain hidden, not out of fear, but out of respect for its sacredness. So as we continue this journey, I invite you to reflect. What truths in your life feel too delicate, too powerful to be spoken aloud? Which parts of your soul feel like ancient secrets waiting in the dark? In the next part, we'll explore the second thing you must never reveal after awakening, a truth that, if ignored, can reverse your spiritual growth and pull you back into illusion. Alan Watts once said, "To be free from convention is not to spurn it, but not to be deceived by it." Those who awaken spiritually begin to see through the invisible threads that bind society together, the expectations, the judgments, the quiet fear of being different. But awakening does not mean rejecting the world. It means seeing it as it is, without illusion. And yet, there's a fragile truth hidden within this clarity, something that must be kept safe from the noise of misunderstanding. The second thing you must never reveal after awakening is your vision for others' paths. When your consciousness expands, you begin to see patterns in the lives of those around you, why they suffer, why they repeat mistakes, why they are caught in endless cycles of pain or desire. You might feel an overwhelming urge to help, to wake them up, to show them what you now see so clearly. But here lies one of the deepest paradoxes of the spiritual path. You cannot awaken another soul before its time. When you try, even from love, it often backfires. The mind that is still asleep interprets your words as arrogance or madness. Your light, instead of guiding them, blinds them. Watts often reminded his students that the teacher appears only when the student is ready, not before. True compassion is not about pulling others toward enlightenment, but walking your own path so fully that your peace becomes a silent invitation. Think about the sun. It doesn't chase after the planets, forcing them to orbit. It simply shines, and by its nature they revolve around it. In the same way, the awakened soul influences others not through persuasion, but through presence. When you reveal to someone what you believe their spiritual problem is, you interfere with their sacred process of discovery. You strip them of the struggle that could become their teacher. It's like giving a child the answers before they've learned the question. It robs them of wisdom born through experience. The ego loves to play savior. It loves to be the enlightened guide, the one who knows. But awakening isn't a crown. It's a dissolution. The deeper you go, the less there is of you to preach. True wisdom whispers rather than shouts. It acts rather than explains. And it understands that every soul unfolds in divine timing. Have you ever tried to warn someone about a painful choice, only to watch them ignore you, and later realize that their mistake became the very lesson that changed their life? That's the rhythm of spiritual evolution. Each being must walk through their own night to find their dawn. So guard your vision for others. Don't tell people what they need to see. Simply live what you've seen. Let your serenity be your sermon. When people are ready, they will feel drawn to your silence more than to your words. Watts often used the image of ripples on water. When a stone falls into a pond, the ripples expand effortlessly. They don't try to move outward, they just do. In the same way, your inner stillness radiates naturally. You don't need to explain your awakening or prescribe enlightenment to anyone. The awakened don't convert, they illuminate. But why is this so hard to accept? Because after awakening, there's still a part of you that remembers the loneliness of ignorance. You want to lift others from it. Yet, the moment you attempt to force awakening, you step back into ego, the very thing you thought you transcended. Alan Watts would laugh gently at this human contradiction. He would say, "You're under no obligation to be the guru of the universe. The world doesn't need saving. It's playing." That's the beauty and the mystery of existence. Life doesn't need to be fixed, it needs to be understood. The divine is not lost. It's disguised as you, as me, as every ordinary moment that passes unnoticed. And once you truly see this, you stop trying to reform the dream. You begin to dance with it. And that is the quiet dignity of awakening, knowing that truth doesn't need to be defended. It doesn't need validation or converts. It simply is. Ask yourself now, how many times have you tried to explain a realization to someone, only to feel emptiness afterward? How often have you mistaken their confusion for rejection? What if that emptiness was the universe whispering, "This truth was meant for you, not for them, at least not yet"? As you protect your inner knowing, you cultivate humility. You stop using your insight to control and start using it to understand. You recognize that awakening is not about separation from the unawakened, but compassion for their journey. So never reveal your vision for others' growth, because their blindness, their confusion, and even their mistakes are part of a sacred choreography that only life itself can direct. Now, if the first thing not to reveal is your personal mystical experiences, and the second is your vision for others, what comes next touches something even more intimate: your future. Because when you awaken, time itself changes meaning. You begin to see your future not as a chain of events, but as unfolding consciousness. Yet revealing this vision can trap you back in illusion. In the next part, we'll uncover the third thing you must never reveal, and it's one that even the most experienced seekers often overlook. Alan Watts once said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. When you awaken spiritually, that simple truth begins to sink in. You stop seeing life as a race to somewhere else and start recognizing it as an ever-present unfolding. Time loses its grip, and so does fear. You realize that the future is not waiting for you. It's being created through your very state of consciousness in this moment. And that brings us to the third thing you must never reveal to anyone once you begin to awaken: your vision for your future or your destiny. At first, this might sound strange. Why shouldn't you share your dreams or your plans? Isn't that how we manifest them? By speaking them into existence. Yet spiritual awakening doesn't follow the same laws as ordinary ambition. What you see when your consciousness expands is not just a plan. It's a glimpse into a higher possibility, a path that still requires silence, incubation, and faith. When you talk too early about what your soul is becoming, you expose sacred energy to external interference. Every word, every opinion from others can subtly distort the vibration of your intention. People will project their fears, their doubts, their limitations, and your delicate vision, still forming in the invisible, can begin to fade under their weight. Alan Watts often described this as the paradox of naming. The moment you name something, you limit it. When you define your spiritual destiny in words, you freeze a living current into a fixed idea, and what was once fluid and alive becomes rigid, a concept, an identity. Have you noticed that some of your deepest transformations happen quietly, without announcement? The most profound shifts occur not when you declare them, but when you live them in silence. In silence, your future grows roots. In noise, it gets uprooted. It's like a seed under the soil. If you dig it up to show people how it's doing, it dies. The same happens to spiritual visions. They need the dark, the unseen, to germinate. Watts reminded us that life is a dance, not a march. The awakened soul doesn't rush to tell others where it's heading, because it knows the dance changes with every step. Once you declare what your future self will be, you unconsciously begin to perform for that image instead of surrendering to the living mystery of change. This doesn't mean you shouldn't dream or plan. It means your plans must remain sacred until they mature inside you. The awakened don't need validation or applause. They need presence. Silence becomes the space where destiny breathes. Have you ever shared a goal or vision, only to feel your enthusiasm fade afterward? It's because part of your energy was released in the telling. Every time we speak of something too soon, we trade a fragment of creative power for temporary validation. The awakened learn to channel that energy inward, letting their silence speak for them. So protect your vision. Don't reveal the shape of your becoming until it becomes solid in the unseen. Let your transformation surprise even you. Alan Watts once observed that water always finds its level. It doesn't need to fight to reach its place. The same is true for your destiny. When you remain aligned with awareness, everything that is meant for you flows naturally, without struggle. You don't need to prove your growth. You don't need to convince others of what you're becoming. Life is already unfolding your future in perfect rhythm. All that's required of you is trust. Ask yourself, who are you becoming in silence? What version of you is being shaped by the stillness between your thoughts? Can you feel that quiet transformation, the one that asks for no witness, no approval, only faith? Watts believed that the greatest obstacle to awakening was the obsession with control, the idea that we must always know what comes next. But true spirituality isn't about knowing, it's about surrendering to the knowingness that life already holds. And that's why your destiny must remain unspoken until it fully takes form. Because once you awaken, you stop chasing the future. You start embodying it. So remember this: the awakened don't talk about where they're going. They walk it, silently, gracefully, with trust in the invisible current that guides all things. Now, if the first thing you must never reveal is your personal spiritual experiences, and the second is your vision for others, and the third is your future or destiny, then the next truth we'll explore cuts even deeper. In the next part, we'll uncover the fourth thing you must never reveal to anyone, a truth so intimate that even many enlightened souls struggle to keep it sacred. It has to do with your pain, your inner wounds, and the way they secretly shape your light. What we'll uncover next may completely change how you understand healing and spiritual strength. Alan Watts once said, "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." Those words are not cynical, they are liberating. They remind us that much of what we call pain is the friction between who we think we are and who we truly are. When you awaken, that illusion begins to crumble, and what emerges is both raw and radiant, your truth. But even truth has its hidden chambers. We've already spoken of the first three things you must keep sacred: your inner experiences, your vision for others, and your destiny. Now we enter the most intimate territory, the fourth thing you must never reveal: your deepest wounds. It may sound contradictory. Society tells you that vulnerability is strength, that sharing your pain is healing, and in many ways, that's true. But spiritual wounds are not the same as emotional ones. Emotional pain seeks empathy. Spiritual pain seeks silence. There are some wounds that are not meant to be discussed. They are meant to be transmuted. When you awaken, you begin to feel pain differently. It's no longer just sadness or loss. It becomes alchemical fire, burning away illusion. Your wounds become mirrors that show you who you really are. But if you reveal them too early, before they have become wisdom, you invite others to touch what is still bleeding. And people, even well-meaning ones, will interpret your sacred suffering through their own unhealed filters. They will give advice, offer sympathy or judgment, and all of it may pull you back into the very illusion you've been transcending. Alan Watts once described suffering as resistance to change. Pain, in this sense, is sacred energy, urging transformation. When you hold your pain in silence, it becomes prayer. When you expose it prematurely, it becomes noise. Think of a butterfly still in its chrysalis. If someone tries to help it break free too soon, it dies. Its wings never strengthen. The same is true for your spiritual suffering. The silence around your wounds gives them time to mature into strength. There's an extraordinary dignity in quiet healing. It's not repression, it's reverence. You are giving your soul the privacy it needs to turn pain into power. And when that transformation completes, your very presence begins to radiate healing without a single word. People feel your calm, your compassion, and they don't even know why. So keep your deepest pain between you and the divine. Let it teach you in the sacred solitude where no one's voice can drown its wisdom. And now we arrive at the fifth and final thing you must never reveal once you've awakened, the most mysterious of all. It is the extent of your inner peace. That may sound surprising. Why would peace, the very goal of awakening, need to be hidden? The reason is simple yet profound. Peace, when displayed, becomes pride. When you talk about how serene or enlightened you are, the ego silently slips back into the throne you thought you left behind. Watts warned that the ego is the biggest hoax in human existence. It disguises itself even as humility. The moment you declare, "I am free from ego," it returns, smiling. True peace is not something you perform, it's something you embody. When you reveal your inner stillness to others, it invites comparison. Some will envy it, others will challenge it, and soon your serenity will be tested not by life, but by attention. But peace doesn't need witnesses. It needs stillness. It thrives in anonymity. Think of the ocean. On the surface, waves crash and roar, but deep beneath, the water is motionless, infinite, silent. That depth is what real peace feels like. It doesn't announce itself, it simply is. And that is what the awakened soul becomes, an ocean disguised as a drop. The greatest masters rarely speak of their peace because they no longer see it as something separate from themselves. They laugh, they cry, they live, but beneath it all there's a quiet knowing. Everything is the same dance. Alan Watts once compared enlightenment to laughter. Spontaneous, effortless, impossible to force. You can't explain it. You can only express it by being it. So never reveal the extent of your peace. Let it remain invisible, like air, felt, not seen. Let people wonder why your presence calms them. Let your silence speak the language of eternity, because that's the ultimate lesson of awakening. What is truly sacred cannot be spoken. Every attempt to describe it reduces it. The awakened learn to guard their treasures not out of fear, but out of love, for they understand that revelation without readiness becomes distortion. So as we close this journey, remember these 5 sacred silences. Keep your mystical experiences sacred. Keep your vision for others private. Keep your destiny unspoken. Keep your wounds protected. Keep your peace invisible. Each silence is not an act of secrecy. It's an act of preservation. You are protecting the divine flame within you from the winds of misunderstanding. Alan Watts once said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." When you awaken, you realize that everything you experience, your pain, your peace, your vision, is the universe learning what it means to be human. But the most enlightened souls know when to speak and when to remain silent. So walk gently. Let your wisdom flow through actions, not declarations. Let your silence thunder louder than words. And above all, never forget, the last and most powerful truth is not something you say, it's something you become. Because in the end, awakening is not about revealing your light to the world, it's about realizing that you were never separate from it. Thanks for looking.